Good evening and welcome to the joint meeting of the Cotati City Council and the successor agency to the former Cotati Community Redevelopment Agency for Tuesday, December 13, 2016. We're reporting out a closed session regarding labor negotiations, and we have nothing to report out on that. And we will have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Skillman?
Here.
Councilmember Delasso?
Here.
Mayor Moore?
Here.
Vice Mayor Harvey?
Here.
Councilmember Landman?
Here.
And if you would join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic to which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It was kind of a weird echo. I thought I hit mute. You may speak on this item at the end of the session. No. A non-agendized, well, that's a non-action item that you can speak on at the end of the meeting where it's agendized for those items.
You're refusing me my right to speak at this time.
No, I'm moving your right to speak later in the meeting.
You're refusing for me to speak at this time.
Let me clarify that for you. I'm giving you the opportunity to speak on the non-action items at the end of the meeting.
Which means that you're refusing.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Then I can speak right now.
No.
Should I continue? Can I continue? May I continue?
No. You may speak later in the meeting on the, okay, thank you. So, now in light of the recent tragedies in Oakland, last week I'd like to offer up a moment of silence for those family, friends, victims of those people. Thank you so much. And I'm looking for an approval of the minutes.
Move to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And we're going to move on to announcements. The City of Cotati has special open office hours on Monday evenings from 5 to 7 p.m. by appointment in the Community Development Department at City Hall as part of its Cotati Open for Business program. This program provides personalized assistance and information to developers, current Cotati business owners, and those interested in starting a new business within the city. The Rohnert Park Cotati Regional Library hosts events for all ages, including art, exhibits, book clubs, and children's programs. All events are free and open to the public. For more information, call the library at 584-9121 or visit sonomalibrary.org. The Cotati Historical Society Museum is open regularly the second Tuesday of each month from 5 to 7 p.m., Saturdays from 1 to 4, and by appointment. For more information, call 794-0305. Citizens interested in receiving City Cotati community alerts via text or email are encouraged to sign up at nixle, nixle.com. And the city offers a variety of recreation programs for all ages. See the details on the web at cotaticity.org. Come and help feed Sonoma County's hunger on Wednesday, December 21st, 2016, from approximately 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. behind Cotati City Hall with Councilmember Delasso. Volunteers from the California Homemakers Association will be packing up nutritious food for those in need. We're looking for drivers, too. For more information, contact CHA at 591-9573. And last but not least, City Hall will be closed on December 16th and reopen January 3rd, 2017. Building inspections will continue during the holiday closure. Now we're looking for approval of the final agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. I would recommend that the council pull and defer to a future meeting item 11B on the regular calendar.
Any objection to that from the council? So pulled. Okay, so now we're going to go on to citizens' business and public comment for consent calendar items. Any member of the public wishing to speak to the council on any items listed on the consent calendar or any matter not listed on the agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the council is not allowed to consider issues or take action on any item not listed on the agenda during this period. Pursuant to City Council Policy 2016-01, comments of any member of the public are normally restricted to a total of 3 minutes in length per person for matters not on the agenda, and a total of 3 minutes per person in length for any and all items on the consent calendar. The mayor may extend time limit for reasonable time where disability accommodation has been requested. So with that in mind, we'll open up the citizens' business. Mr. Barrett.
Good evening. For the benefit of the audience and the folks at home, my name is George Barrett. I'm a former city councilman here in Cotati, served with honor and distinction. And I want to bring our attention back to the last city council meeting. And because the city council is not open up for additional public comment at the end of the meeting, it forces citizens sometimes to come back at the next meeting and point out a couple things that may be important. I want to bring our attention to the fact that at the last meeting, Ms. Lori Alderman was standing up on this podium, as is her right to speak, and she may or may not have spoken out of order. However, Council Member Skillman took it upon herself to yell out, "You're out of order," unquote, to Ms. Alderman, and it was, in fact, Ms. Skillman was the person who was out of order. It is Mr. Moore, the mayor, who is the presiding officer of these meetings. And I take exception to the fact that Wendy Skillman or any city councilman taking it upon themselves to correct the mayor or blurt out statements out of order and trying to take control. You know, Ms. Skillman, you have been mayor in the past, and it was out of order and irresponsible for you to jump over Mr. Moore and try to take control of the meeting. I'm sure you don't do that in court, if you're ever in court, but the fact is that it's inappropriate. You owe Ms. Alderman an apology, you owe the mayor an apology, and you owe the citizens an apology. Now let it be known to all council members. The presiding officer is running the meeting. If you take exception to anything that he or she is doing as mayor, simply recuse yourself. Take a walk. Take a break. I think it was very rude and disrespectful to the mayor to try to police the meeting from your own seats. I hope I don't see that again.
Thank you. And I have a card here from Brad Silvestro and Mike Heiniger. Thank you. Phonics really helped. Welcome.
Good evening, City Council and Mr. Mayor. My name is Brad Silvestro. This is Mike Heiniger. We're paramedics with American Medical Response, also known as Sonoma Life Support. We've been your paramedic ambulance transport provider for 25 years. And in fact, this year we're celebrating our 25th anniversary. We are proud to be the provider of paramedic transport services for the central Sonoma County. We're responsible for an area that's approximately 304 square miles and comprises the cities of Santa Rosa, Sebastopol, Roder Park, Cotati, and the unincorporated areas immediately outside of them. We respond to approximately 32,000 calls a year. We transport just over 26,000 patients a year. We enjoy a very positive, unique working relationship with both the Rancho Adobe Fire Protection District as well as the Cotati Police Department. And we're here tonight to let you know that we appreciate your support of them because together with them, we save lives here in this community every year. And we simply couldn't do it without the outstanding working relationship that we have with them. And so really, like I said, we're here to thank you for the support that you provide the community and in turn the support that you provide to us. Like I said, we've been here now for 25 years and we look forward to continuing to provide service to not only this community but the ones that we serve. We all live here. We work here. These are our towns, our families, and it's really important to us that we take the opportunity to just come and say thank you as a small token of our appreciation and to help celebrate our 25th anniversary. You see, I think we have some gifts that we've given to you, and that's it. We just want to say thank you, let you know that we appreciate you and the service that you do, and in turn create the opportunity for us to work with both
Mr. Silvestro, thank you so much for serving the community for 25 years. That's fantastic. Thank you for your service to the community. Yeah. Any comments from the existing councilman?
Sure. Gentlemen, thank you again for being here tonight, and certainly for the services you provide. I know 3 years ago I had to take a ride, not in your ambulance, but in an ambulance, and it's not the highlight of my life. However, it was a good thing in many, many ways. So, really appreciate and supportive. I have a nephew in San Francisco who's a paramedic, and I know I've personally been involved in numerous SARs out where I work with the National Park Service at Point Reyes. So it's a critical service, and really thank you guys for what you do. And you're always on top of things. There's never been a complaint. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much.
Hang on. You can't get away that easy.
We've hardly embarrassed you yet. I'd like my chance at this. Well, now, if you have your comms set so they can make a little fake tone so you can run out, this is a good time to do that. But actually, no, seriously, obviously I want to join my colleagues in thanking you. This is something that's close to my heart. In another lifetime, in about, I think, 1977, I was a fireman with Novato Fire. I was one of their first 10 paramedics, actually, in Marin County. So when you talk about how this is a team effort, you hit it so perfectly, because I think this is something EMS, fire, and law have to do together, and the public doesn't always get this. I often the call is, well, gosh, the ambulance is there. Why did the fire engine come first? Or why did the police, you're blocking all the street. That's a lot of tax dollars. And people don't understand the nature of the call, how seconds that perhaps maybe that officer is closer, maybe that fire engine's closer. That could be important. They don't understand for some calls, maybe you need law to control the scene, so you do the things you need to do. And other times, perhaps they don't understand, for some calls, we need all the bodies we can get to be able to effectively manage the scene and transport the patient. So with that, we're certainly happy to be able to play the part we do, and we greatly appreciate what you provide. So thank you so much for this, and thank you for being here tonight, and congratulations. Congratulations. Here's hoping for another good quarter century for you.
Thank you very much. I did a paramedic internship on Rescue 60 in 1985. I think you were there.
We might have been. I looked a little different at that point in time.
Yeah.
We'll have to catch up sometime. That's good. Take care.
Vice Mayor Harvey?
Yes, I had to call your services at one point when my grandmother became ill at our house. And I have to say, everybody was so professional, so caring, so helpful, not only for her, but for us, the family. And I really felt like you guys really cared about everybody involved in the whole situation, and it was just very professional. Things turned out well, everything was okay, but I know that you often come into a situation not knowing, what you're going to come up against, and from what I've seen, it's always handled very professionally, and I really appreciate that you take care of our citizens the way you do, and I also wish you another 25 years. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and you guys have a great holiday. Thank you. Would anyone else like to address citizens' business? Seeing none, I will close citizens' business. And move on to direction on future agenda items. Any items at this point? No? So no directions? Okay, then we'll move on to the consent calendar.
Move to approve. And second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Move on to public hearings. 10A, urgency ordinance for non-medical marijuana cultivation.
Thank
All
you,
yours,
Mayor.
Mr. Obid.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So, as everyone knows, Proposition 64 just passed in November, which legalized the non-medical use of marijuana. And in addition to that, as part of that proposition, it authorizes the personal cultivation of up to 6 marijuana plants within a private residence or upon the grounds of that private residence. Proposition 64 also allowed for cities to enact reasonable regulations around the cultivation of non-medical marijuana, including that occurs inside a residence or accessory structure, and can also prohibit it outdoors outright if necessary, or if deemed desirable by the jurisdiction. And then I think, like we've talked about before, the city does intend to have community discussions around the topic of marijuana more broadly, but we're going to be looking at the first half of 2017 to have those discussions. And the intent of the proposed urgency ordinance before you now is really to, with the passage of Proposition 64, sort of freeze things in place and give the council and the community a chance to weigh in on what they want or don't want to see in the community. One of the concerns is that if, under existing state law now, people are able to cultivate, I mean, granted, it's the wintertime, so you probably won't have a lot of outdoor cultivation right now, but, indoor cultivation or any cultivation at all, that kind of use could be, could already start up prior to the council enacting some type of regulation on it, and then that use could be grandfathered, and it would be something we really couldn't address necessarily. So this is to hold, kind of put a bookmark in it until we can get around to, in the first half of 2017, looking at it more broadly. Because this is a proposed urgency ordinance, it does need a 4/5 approval to pass it, which would make it valid. It's only valid for 45 days, at which time it would have to come back for a regular public hearing. And at that time, if the council were to extend it, according to Robin, it'd be valid for 10 months, 15 days, and 16 and a half hours. I added 16 and a half hours. It seems so arbitrary, 10 months and 15 days. I don't know where they came up with that. But anyway, it extends it for some period of time, which, given the fact that we haven't started the public discussion on marijuana more broadly, I think 45 days is going to come and go pretty quick, and it probably will be coming back in a full public hearing to discuss an additional extension, at least until the community weighs in and decides what they want to do. And the one thing I will say is that one of the main issues, at least in the short term, is cultivation in residential areas. Outdoor cultivation, of course, can be a nuisance problem, and even if you have cultivation inside a residence or an accessory structure, that could also pose all sorts of building code or other types of nuisance problems. And the way it's written, I guess the current interpretation is that if you had apartments, each apartment could cultivate up to 6 marijuana plants, which could be a significant nuisance. If we recall the discussion that we had about the smoking ordinance and common walls and common attic spaces, the odors that cultivation creates, not even smoking, but just the cultivation, can be definitely a nuisance to someone next door that's not cultivating. So again, this will stop that for now until we figure out how we want to regulate it. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Obid at the moment?
I just had a really arbitrary one at the moment, and then I'll wait for after public comment to comment more. But do we know why there are 2 copies of the proposal at the end of the...
Yeah, I'm sorry. So Robin whispered in my ear just as I concluded that make sure to point out there's 2 ordinances. So there are 2 ordinances. One is a moratorium on the outdoor cultivation. That's the first one in the packet. And the second one is a moratorium on indoor cultivation except under certain circumstances. So it basically, because you can't prohibit it outright indoors, but you can regulate it. So this proposes regulations around the indoor cultivation, but it bans it outright outdoors in all zoning districts, including residential.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Councilmember Delosa.
Yeah, so I think that's been my question when I read through the packet is how and who would do the regulating of anything that's going on indoors. Yeah, I think of, so the worst case scenario I think of, which is not applicable under this ordinance, the worst-case scenario is, a whole number of plants with a lot of extra electrical going on, and that whole wiring issue is kind of a frightening thing. Not to mention, if you have a grow house, let's say, we know they're illegal, but if you have a grow house, then there's also the issue of some kind of violence going on. So those are my two big concerns. That one's kind of removed with 6 plants, I would hope, unless somebody's really desperate. So I guess my question is the city, there's no other jurisdiction, is the city responsible then to, how are we even going to know who's going to be growing plants, and how do we follow up on that? There's too many unanswered questions in my head right now.
So the city would be doing the regulation and enforcement, and practically speaking, it's usually driven by complaints. So someone complains that their neighbor is doing something, and then we would look into it. If it allows us to pursue it from a code enforcement perspective. So if there's a nuisance issue, we can pursue it as a code enforcement case. If there's building code violations, we can pursue that as well. So that's how it would work. But we'd be the ones doing it.
Okay. I think that's fine for now. I'm not satisfied with that, but I get where that's going. Thanks.
Vice Mayor Harvey?
Yeah, I think I was going in the same place where Councilmember Delasso was going, because a couple of these items in here, both the ventilation and filtration systems, as well as that the residence is used for residence also, and that the areas were kept able to use for cooking and bathing and those kinds of things. So it is a little concerning that the only way we have to really know about that is if there is a complaint, it sounds like, because I don't know how we make that tighter. I guess we can't, but I guess that's something that we'll look at next year. On that, the other thing that I was concerned about is it said that the area shouldn't be accessible to anyone under the ages of 21. Well, if the home has children, how do you do that? I mean, if they say they can grow 6 plants and they have babies, the two really don't mesh together. So I was a little unclear as to how that was going to work. And then you talked about written consent from the property owner if you were renting. And what struck me was similar to, as you said, in the multi-unit, when the rental agreements were written, it occurs to me that probably is something that should be in the rental agreement, just like we did with the smoking ordinance in multi-unit. And you pointed it out, but I wanted to ask about the private residence because it will get a little bit hard with, as it says here, an apartment unit, because there's no way they can have separate ventilation and filtration in an apartment unit. And what about the impacts to others? And, I guess those are things that we'll look at next year with that. But those parts in this did cause me a little bit concern. Those are kind of my questions, comments on that. And as far as the outdoor goes, I had plenty of folks when I was going door to door that had problems with neighbors that had outdoor growing. And in fact, one couple shared with me that as the growing season got towards the end there, people were unclear as to where exactly this stuff was, and they actually had some folks come into their yard and they had weapons, and they realized they were in the wrong yard and went over the fence to the other yard. So outdoor growing can be a problem, and I know that there are citizens within our city that are concerned about that, because you can't always tell where it exactly is. So that is probably something that we'll look to, later. But I know that that's a concern, and I assume that the people that were growing it, it was a medical situation. But I don't know that. But I do know that some number of people were concerned about that.
Thank you. Councilmember Lyman?
No questions right now.
Okay. I don't have any questions right now. I might bring it back a little bit after I hear a little bit of public comment on there. So with that in mind, I'll open it up for public comment. Mr. Barrett? Probably have some.
Well, it appears on face value that we're creating a lot of extra work here that may be unnecessary to put forth an urgency ordinance or an emergency moratorium or such. At this time, it seems like you're creating more work. I don't understand why we're not putting the full issue on the table here tonight for your consideration for a few different reasons. This is the slowest time of the year for most city councils. There's not much on your plate to do. This would have been a perfect time to address it. As you can see, we have a very low turnout, practically no turnout here for this meeting tonight. You could have agendized this for tonight. You could have also set up a special meeting for next week had you really wanted to address this issue. The problem with these moratoriums and these ordinances and so forth is that sometimes they tend to stick around for a very long time. One of the things I was missing from the staff report tonight is what are the other cities doing about this? Usually Damien's pretty good about giving us a report card of what's going on in the other cities. If there is any foot dragging, we want to find out what the real cause is. And at the last meeting, I think he explained to some degree why we want to push this over to next year. However, it's not like the city is inundated with a lot of things to do. You can look at the agenda. There's not much here. There wasn't much on the last agenda. I think you missed a wonderful opportunity to put this on the agenda tonight, noticed it properly, or even called for a special meeting on this, and tried to put this matter to bed in 2016 rather than drag it out for next year. It just seems like you're creating a lot of extra work for yourselves.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on this topic? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment on there and bring it back to the council. Two quick things. When you talk about putting things on the agenda, this particular agenda was 250 pages. So to really open that up without any public comment and any workshops, without further investigation and citizen input and information around that, I think would have been a little bit premature. And secondly, many of the other cities around us are currently imposing moratoriums to allow for public workshops and community engagement, both the residential and the commercial components of that. So that's why we don't have it on the, that's why we're having it on an urgency ordinance. My only concern about the ordinance at this point, going back, was I know it's an emergency ordinance, but it seems like some of the language was a little drastic. Looking at some of those things, I don't know if that's necessary to impart a sense of urgency and concern, or is it just template language that we use in particular situations like that?
If I may, first of all, let me say that these ordinances are modeled, they're very similar to other ordinances that have been adopted recently by Sonoma, Windsor, and Healdsburg. I'm not sure what the other cities have done or are doing, but I know it's certainly topic one of discussion for all the cities right now. When you have an interim ordinance like this, there are requirements that you make a connection to health and safety issues, and that you do show that there is a reason, first of all, for freezing the status quo, and that can be as simple as there have been complaints to police, there have been reports of criminal activity or explosions or, other activity that have occurred around the issue of marijuana cultivation. We need to take a more careful look at that, see what safety measures, if any, we want to impose. So I agree with you. There are portions of the language that may seem dramatic, but they're very much in keeping with the kinds of findings that cities typically make, where they're freezing a situation and drawing a connection to potential health and safety issues if they don't allow for a moratorium for study.
Yes, ma'am.
And if I may just add, that doesn't necessarily mean that after you've conducted a more thorough study, you're bound to any of this language, because if you adopt an ultimate ordinance, you may have findings that in this situation, there isn't, this particular type of situation, but there is this one, so you're going to regulate that. So it's not binding in any way on the city to feel like they don't have any flexibility here because they made these initial findings.
And/or future language.
Correct.
Yeah. Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was perfect timing because I shared some of your same concerns. My notes, actually, as I read through the material, was I wasn't quite as convinced that the sky would necessarily fall as much as Chloe, although it's within the realm of possibility. I mean, one has to accept with changing something that's a scarce resource that has some monetary value does create crime. But when you make that less scarce, legal, and ideal, potentially, numerous people growing small amounts in their residence in their backyard, I think some of that vanishes potentially. So I'm glad to hear that. That's helpful for me. The only reason that I find it a little troubling is that clearly the voters have spoken. This is a legal right in this state. So that is on my mind, finding the best path forward and not unduly taking too long to do that. That said, I certainly do support preventing unnecessary or problematic grandfathering happening. I think it makes a lot of sense to wait till next year to have a chance to, number one, see how other communities are facing that, hear a little more from our community, and then we can work as a community and look at where we want to go with this. I will say in the regulation that I did see, so I have my concerns about some of it being unnecessarily harsh, but one thing I did like is that you did try to put this in a position that it avoids allowing indoor non-medical marijuana cultivation from transiting into a commercial process in a residential neighborhood, because I've always felt that's been a huge problem, and I think we have the opportunity to really see some improvements with that as we go forward with this. So yeah, I'm looking to hearing more of this. I would like to know, I've heard anecdotal stories about ventilation requirements because odors being an issue. I'm not sure. I honestly don't have the first-hand knowledge to know if it is or isn't. It's a difficult field trip to ask for staff to put together for us. I'm not sure quite how we get that, but it would be helpful. I would like to know if this is just people who don't like the sound of this or if this is truly an issue or not. And I'm sure I'll hear more about it as we get closer to that date, especially after tonight. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Pardon me, it is an issue because even in the neighborhood where John and I are at, having a grow house over there, I'm assuming it's much greater than the limited indoor plants. And it wafts a good block away.
See, that's the real question I have, too. There's that, which is clearly a nuisance and a problem, versus what happens if somebody is growing 3 to 6 plants next to their tomatoes during the summer, or somebody perhaps sets something a little more aggressive, but still essentially limited that 6 plants within their house, as is their legal right now. Is that truly a problem? And how much ventilation do I really want, or filtration do I really want to require? Do I even really need it for that? I honestly don't know that. So I would like to hear more about that.
I think after we conduct these workshops in the spring, we're going to know more about this than we ever thought we would.
Maybe more than we want to.
About that. No. Vice Mayor Harvey, any further comments?
I think I agree with you. The one thing I wanted to touch on was the comment that was made about, why not now? Why not the discussion? And as I understand it from what was in the report, is that we don't want to have a situation where someone is grandfathered in. So if we do the ordinance now and then are able to take our time to fully flesh it out, that's the best way to do. Otherwise, because the proposition passed, technically someone could have already started today, if you will. And the longer we let those todays go, those people are grandfathered in. And that was my understanding from reading the material. So I hope that helps. And I hope the sky doesn't fall, and I hope that none of those problems happen. But I hope that, like some of the other cities in the county are doing, that we can bring in some folks and have some pretty informative sessions on this. But I do want to make sure that we give people the time. And while, yes, it would be nice to have it done now, unfortunately, a lot of people are dealing with, the holiday situation, and they're not really interested in this. I mean, I wish they were, but, hopefully after all the holidays are over, maybe we'll get a better ordinance opportunity with folks, and we can take our time to make sure that we have multiple opportunities for people at different time frames.
I think there's going to be a much greater level of interest after the inauguration. Councilmember Dawson?
Great, thank you, Mayor Moore. First of all, when I attended one of the Health Action Network meetings, I thought the word marijuana was being removed and being replaced with cannabis at all levels. So I just wanted to throw that out there as an edification thing. So you may want to, I'm saying it's fine for these ordinances tonight. I don't think anybody's going to argue with us that, hey, why did you call it marijuana? But I just think in the future.
If I may, and there are certain places in Prop 64 that do talk about cannabis in certain contexts, but Prop 64 itself throughout refers to marijuana and marijuana products. And one of the things that a lot of cities are trying to do is mold their definitions of various things to match the definitions that are in the proposition. So you're probably right about what the trend is, but I think maybe the Prop 64 folks hadn't caught up with it when they put this on the ballot, so we're hewing to their definitions.
No, and that makes perfect sense. I just want to be clear that the city attorney knows more about cannabis than I do. And so that's the point I'm trying to make here. I think what's also really important, though, is that we are trying to stay in step with the other cities and what they're moving forward and using similar language and similar ordinances. And I think that's really important. I know we've had a couple of discussions at the county level on this, and I met separately with folks from county council on this probably 2 months before the election, so it's been some time. And just in anticipation, what are the cities going to do? What should the county be thinking of doing? And we're all trying to follow this similar model and have similar language, because I think that's going to be probably a key to enforcement and all kinds of things. So I'm totally fine with that. And I do understand certainly the need for the emergency ordinance. I mean, we need to have something in place that we can then take a breath and do the right thing and do the planning for this with public input in a proper time frame. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I definitely think this is important to get it on the books as soon as possible, just to freeze it in place, and then also get a lot of input from the public, because this can be a huge issue. There's the odor, there's the issue of uptick in crime. Having worked at both Sonoma and Mendocino district attorney's offices, so many things associated, because people see an outdoor grow and they think cash. And so they think, great, I'm going to break in there and I'm going to steal some cash. And there's just an association with it, whether it's valid or not. It becomes a crime of opportunity. So I think it's really important to be able to get public input, see what people want in our city, and then also maintaining consistency across the county, because you don't want to be the one city that's got a more lenient policy than other cities, because then you become the Emerald Triangle of Sonoma County. So anyway, I am very much in support of this. I think it's important to get the urgency ordinance in place and then get as much public input as possible so that we can see what our citizens need now that we've got this new law in place.
Thank you, Councilmember Skillman. It appears that we have some input from the council and some direction, so I'd be willing to entertain a motion.
So we need, it sounds like we need 2 separate motions. Okay. So I'm going to attempt the first one. Move to adopt an urgency ordinance to prohibit the outdoor cultivation of non-medical marijuana.
At second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Let the record show that's 5-0.
And I would,
Go ahead. We need another motion.
I would move to provide conditions for the cultivation of non-medical marijuana indoor grows under a separate ordinance.
Second?
We We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, I thought for sure we'd have more people on that one. Mr. Scott. Item 10B, ordinance ending chapters of the federal retreatment program. Almost sounds like an internment, doesn't it?
An internment of wastewater, yeah.
Right. Effluent.
We think the microphone's working now, right?
Oh, it is, okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
To introduce and restate chapters in the city's municipal code addressing our sewer system. And this is prompted by, let me just back up. So the city is a member agency of a regional wastewater system where, as a member agency, we collect our wastewater and send it to the city of Santa Rosa's wastewater treatment plant, along with other neighboring cities. As the owner and operator of a wastewater treatment plant, the city of Santa Rosa is subject to periodic inspections by the Regional Water Quality Control Board. Well, the most recent inspection identified changes needed to the city of Santa Rosa's municipal code as well as member agency code to be consistent with the federal EPA's pretreatment regulations. It makes the reasoning there is that it's important to regulate point sources, industries, commercial customers, restaurants, et cetera, that could potentially put pollutants in the wastewater system that could disrupt the treatment plant. So you want to make sure that those pollutants don't get in the wastewater to begin with. So there are federal regulations that have specific language in them, and from time to time you've got to make sure that they're consistent with the municipal codes of the cities. Along with that, the city took the opportunity to formally give the city of Santa Rosa's director of utilities the general authority to enforce their pretreatment system within the city of Cotati. That wasn't there before. It was in an MOU, but this just really makes it very clear. And then there were some definitions that were not listed further in the code, so we went ahead and removed those. And several months ago, this city staff received direction from council to take this opportunity to address the persistent delinquencies and sewer payments. It comes up every year where there's several customers of the city, sewer-only customers that regularly do not pay their bill, and then it puts a burden on the city to put it on to go through the property lien process. Well, unfortunately, the city staff looked at that and had legal counsel provide some options, and nothing really readily simple and straightforward jumped out at us. We already have a penalty which is imposed, and we looked at an option, some options, but nothing. It just started going sideways on us and getting kind of complicated. So we we're not addressing that item in tonight. With that, I think I do have Martin St. George here, who's a environmental compliance officer with the City of Santa Rosa to make the rest of the presentation tonight.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for the citizens of Cotati as well. Appreciate you being here, and good to see you, Damien, in your new role. It's been a while since I've been here. As the city engineer, Mr. Scott, said that